The vast expanse of the Theta Serpentis system was calm. Cold stars hung silent over the emerald swirl of the gas giant below. Among them drifted the proud fleet of the Korath Dominion, 112 battlecruisers, sleek and long, with hulls of polished obsidian. At the heart of the formation floated the Varkos Eternal, the flagship. Aboard her command deck, High Lord Admiral Crintal observed the distant shimmer of the jump gate on his holo-display. He was an old warrior by Korath standards. 6 campaigns, 3 systems razed, 2 species forced into vassalage, and now, this pathetic backwater called Sol. A pre-FTL world that had suddenly, impossibly, achieved hyperspace technology and begun striking Korath scouting vessels. The High Lords were furious, insolent primates. Their fleets were primitive, their numbers laughable. The order had come down. Full punitive strike. Sol would be taken, its species enslaved. Crintal sneered. "Humans," he hissed. "They will scream like the others." His aide approached. "Admiral, our probes report an unknown vessel approaching through the outer ring. Transponder unrecognized." He raised a brow ridge. "One of their pitiful attempts at a warship?" "Perhaps. Size unknown. Signature is strange." The aide hesitated. "Massive." Crintal waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Send a wing of interceptors. I want it vaporized before it soils our battle net." On the outer fringes, 50,000 kilometers from the fleet core, Korath scouts deployed, sleek arrow-shaped fighters streaking toward the anomaly. They didn't return. Seconds passed. Then a wave of panicked comms burst across the fleet net, static, garbled screams, flashes of light. And then, they saw it. Every holodisplay in the fleet lit with the same image, emerging from hyperspace like a titan from ancient myths, a single, enormous vessel, gray, jagged, bristling with weaponry that seemed wrong. Not elegant, not graceful, brutal, purpose-built to kill. Her hull was scorched from previous battles. Her designation blinked in stark human lettering. UES Retribution, a Terran dreadnought, the first of its class. On the Korath flagship's bridge, silence reigned. Crintal stared, twin hearts thundering in his chest. "What is that?" his aide whispered. "Scan it," Crintal barked. "Find its weaknesses." But the scanners yielded only gibberish, strange alloys, power readings off the charts, weapons arrays their computers couldn't even categorize. Then the Retribution moved. Not with the stately grace of a Korath vessel, but like a predator lunging. Her main guns ignited. Beams of searing light stabbed through space. One cruiser shattered in a single shot. Another followed, then another. Crintal's fleet opened fire. Hundreds of plasma lances and torpedoes, but the Retribution's hull shimmered with layered shields, absorbing the barrage like a mountain weathering a storm. And then came the railguns, slugs the size of small ships punching through entire squadrons with terrifying precision. Within minutes, 20 Korath cruisers were gone. Thousands dead. The fleet began to falter. Formations breaking, comms flooded with terrified voices. "By the stars," Crintal whispered. "It's a demon." His blood chilled. For the first time in his long life, a creeping terror clawed at him. This was not a foe he understood, not one he could defeat by doctrine or numbers. And then the human transmission came. A voice, deep, cold, male. "You have trespassed. You have murdered. You will now learn fear." Panic rippled through the Korath fleet. The sleek black warships, once the pride of a conquering empire, now drifted disorganized and reeling. Officers screamed over comm channels, trying to re-establish formation. But the human warship showed no mercy. UES Retribution cut through space, like a blade through flesh. Her engines burned with eerie blue light, propelling her forward with inhuman acceleration. A second broadside erupted, beams of raw energy arcing outward, dismembering another pair of cruisers. Admiral Crintal gripped the edge of his command chair, claws sinking deep into the alloy armrests. His twin hearts pounded in a syncopated rhythm that echoed in his ears. Never, never had he witnessed such violence from a single ship. "Status of the fleet!" he roared, voice raw with fury. His aides scrambled over shattered control consoles. 73 vessels still operational, but cohesion is collapsing. Units are retreating or engaging independently. Cowards! Fools! This was a fleet bred for dominance, now unraveling before a lone Terran vessel. "Rally them!" Crintal snapped. "Form defensive perimeter Theta 7. Overwhelm it." The aide hesitated. "Admiral, the warship's armaments surpass anything in our archives. Our long-range weapons barely scratch its hull. Close engagement is suicide." Crintal's eyes burned with defiance. "Do it!" But even as his command went out, the Retribution accelerated again. Her main guns rotated smoothly, targeting with terrifying precision. With a soundless burst of kinetic fury, hyper-velocity slugs ripped through a wing of corvettes attempting a flanking maneuver. The ships disintegrated, torn apart mid-turn. On board the human vessel, Captain Marcus Hale stood on his command deck, arms folded across his broad chest. His gray eyes were cold, calculating. "Targets neutralized, sir," his gunnery officer reported, voice calm despite the carnage. "Good," Hale replied. "Keep them running, drive them apart. They're nothing without formation." This wasn't bravado. It was war. And Marcus Hale was a soldier forged by war. He had seen firsthand what the Korath had done. Colonies burned, civilians butchered, orbital habitats shattered into debris fields. They thought humanity weak, primitive. They were about to learn otherwise. "Captain," comms officer called out. "Enemy flagship has issued a rally command. Defensive posture forming." Hale's lip curled into a faint sneer. "Let them. Helm, bring us into optimal firing range. Gunnery, prepare Mark III barrage. Time to carve out their heart." Aboard the Varkos Eternal, Crintal's screens flared with warning glyphs. The human dreadnought was advancing, straight for them. "This is impossible," his aide whispered. "No vessel engages a fleet head-on." But the Retribution wasn't just any vessel. Her shield harmonics shifted mid-flight, adapting to incoming fire with AI-assisted precision. Plasma bolts dissipated harmlessly against layered fields. Missile barrages were intercepted by railgun turrets before they even closed. More Korath ships died with every minute. Crintal's mind raced. There had to be a weakness. Every enemy had one. His people had crushed dozens of species, ruthlessly dissecting their strengths, exploiting their flaws. But this ship was built for one purpose: to kill fleets. A deep dread gnawed at him. "Deploy the Raptor wings," he ordered suddenly. "All of them." The aide hesitated. "All wings, sir. They're our last reserves." "Do it." Dozens of hangar bays opened across the Korath fleet. Hundreds of small, fast strike craft, the dreaded Raptors, spewed forth. Agile and armed with high-yield plasma torpedoes, they were designed to swarm larger vessels. Crintal leaned forward, watching the swarm streak toward the Retribution. "Now we shall see if their steel god can bleed." On the human bridge, alarms chimed. "Captain, Raptor wings inbound. Mass swarm, hundreds of contacts." Marcus Hale's jaw tightened. "Finally, they're panicking." He turned to his tactical officer. "Deploy point defense network. Full automation. Load shock burst rounds." A chorus of confirmations echoed across the bridge. From the Retribution's flanks, hundreds of automated turrets deployed. Sleek, angular weapons platforms bristling with sensors and rapid-fire cannons. The raptor swarm closed in, plasma torpedoes armed, claws extended for hull strikes. And then hell was unleashed. The Retribution's point defense grid activated, firing streams of superheated flechettes and EMP shock bursts. Raptors died by the dozens, shredded mid-flight or crippled by feedback pulses. Those that closed the gap were met by secondary coil guns, tearing through their fragile frames. Within 30 seconds, over half the swarm was annihilated. Marcus Hale watched silently, eyes narrowed. Increased turret cycle rate, no survivors. Another 30 seconds, and the swarm was gone. Space littered with drifting wreckage. On Varkos Eternal, horror gripped the command deck. "Raptor wings neutralized," the aide whispered. His voice was broken. Crintal felt the cold weight of inevitability settle upon him. No formation, no weapon, no stratagem had slowed the human warship. One ship, against an entire fleet, and it was winning. "High Lord Admiral," a junior officer cried out suddenly, voice shaking. "Multiple vessels breaking formation, captains requesting permission to retreat." "Denied," Crintal bellowed. "Any ship that flees will be executed upon return." But even as he spoke, more signals blinked across the fleet net, vessels spooling hyperdrives in desperation. The iron discipline of the Korath was shattering under primal fear. And then came another human broadcast. "You were warned." Hale's voice again, cold and merciless. "Now you will be hunted." The Retribution fired again. Her forward lances pierced the heart of the Korath line. The Skarven, a command cruiser, detonated in a cataclysmic chain reaction, its explosion sending shockwaves through nearby vessels. The Korath fleet began to fracture. Entire wings broke off in full retreat, hyperdrives spooling in panic. "Admiral," the aide whispered, trembling, we must retreat. This is no ordinary enemy." Crintal's claws trembled on his chair. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to save what fragments of his fleet remained. But his pride warred with reason. He was a High Lord Admiral. The Korath did not flee. And yet, one glance at the holodisplay told him the truth. The Retribution was accelerating again, toward them. I will not die here," Crintal hissed. His voice cracked. Order full retreat." The command rippled outward, but it was too late for many. The human warship pursued mercilessly, tearing through stragglers with brutal efficiency. One after another, Korath ships winked out, destroyed or fleeing into hyperspace. On the bridge of the Retribution, Marcus Hale watched the slaughter with grim satisfaction. "Cowards," he muttered. "You came to enslave us, and now you run." He turned to his helm officer. "Set pursuit vector. We're not done yet." "Aye, sir." Hale's eyes gleamed with cold fire. The message was clear. This was only the beginning. The remains of the Korath fleet scattered like frightened prey across the Theta Serpentis system. Dozens of battlecruisers jumped blind into hyperspace, fleeing in chaotic vectors. Others limped away under the weight of catastrophic damage, trailing burning plasma and twisted wreckage. But one ship did not run. At the heart of the chaos, Varkos Eternal still hung in space, its hull scorched, defensive screens flickering. Admiral Crintal stood alone on the dimmed bridge, shoulders hunched beneath the heavy cloak of failure. His officers were gone, most dead. The rest had fled in escape pods or joined the rout. Only his aide remained, pale, trembling. "Admiral," the young officer pleaded, "please, we must jump. The humans will be upon us any moment." Crintal's claws curled, his pride burned hot enough to sear flesh. But beneath that fire, cold understanding. This was no longer a battle, it was an execution. Still, he could not run. Not now, not after what had been witnessed. If word spread, If it reached the High Lords that the Dominion's grand fleet had been shattered by a single Terran warship, the Korath would lose more than ships. They would lose fear, and the Korath ruled through fear. "No," Crintal rasped. His voice was little more than a growl. "If I flee, the Empire dies." He straightened, forcing steel into his spine. "Transmit to the human vessel. Open a channel." The aide's eyes widened. "Admiral, do it!" Aboard UES Retribution, Marcus Hale stood at the forward display as the last enemy signals blinked out across the starfield. The hunt had been swift, merciless. 17 more Korath vessels destroyed in pursuit. Dozens fled into the dark beyond, but one signal remained: Varkos Eternal. The Terran crew watched in tense silence as an incoming transmission request appeared on the main screen. Hale narrowed his eyes. "Put it through." The viewscreen shimmered, revealing the battered bridge of the Korath flagship. Smoke choked the air. Flickering power conduits cast long shadows, and at its center, the towering form of Admiral Crintal stared back with burning yellow eyes. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Crintal's deep voice rumbled across the channel. "Human, this is High Lord Admiral Crintal of the Korath Dominion." Marcus Hale folded his arms, gaze hard. "I know who you are." Crintal bared his fangs, not in a snarl, but in bitter amusement. "So, it is true. Your kind breeds warriors, after all. Not prey." Hale's lip curled. "You learned that too late." A low, guttural chuckle. "Indeed." Crintal's gaze sharpened. "I would speak before the end. Warrior to warrior." Hale tilted his head, studying the alien admiral. Pride clung to him still, but it was the pride of a dying beast. A creature who knew the kill stroke was near, yet refused to grovel. "Speak," Hale said coldly. Crintal's shoulders straightened. "You think this a victory, human, but this is only the first blow. The Dominion will come again, greater in number, greater in fury." Hale's gaze did not waver. "And they will burn like the rest." "Arrogant," Crintal growled, "yet earned." His eyes flicked to the data feeds behind him, burning wreckage of his fleet. "I have fought 100 wars. I have broken species that rose against us, but never—" His voice lowered. "Never have I seen a vessel such as yours." Hale said nothing. He didn't need to. The message had already been sent, in the wreckage that littered Theta Serpentis. But Crintal pressed on. "You are not like the others. You do not beg. You do not flee. You built this machine of death. Why?" For the first time, Hale's eyes darkened, not with hate, but memory. He stepped forward. "Because you slaughtered our colonies," he said, voice iron. "Because you butchered civilians. Because your kind thought we would kneel." The words struck like hammer blows. Crintal's gaze flickered. A flicker of something. Perhaps understanding. Perhaps respect. Then it is vengeance. "No," Hale said coldly. "It's justice." Silence hung between them, two warriors on opposite sides of a blood-soaked gulf. Finally, Crintal gave a slow nod. "Then know this, human. You have won this day, but the Korath do not forget. When next we meet, it will be war beyond your imagining." Hale's stare was ice. "We'll be ready. See that you are." Without another word, Crintal cut the channel. Aboard Varkos Eternal, the Admiral exhaled slowly. His aide trembled beside him. "Admiral," the officer whispered. "What now?" Crintal gazed out at the darkened stars. "Now, we carry the truth home." He turned, voice low. "Prepare the emergency jump. Set coordinates for Korath Prime." The aide's eyes widened. "But the jump core—" "Do it!" Crintal ordered. "I will not die here. Not today." On the Retribution's bridge, tactical alarms flared. "Captain, enemy flagship is spooling an emergency hyperjump." Marcus Hale's gaze sharpened. "Target engines, fire." But the battered Varkos Eternal had anticipated the strike. Plasma vents burst from her hull, masking her core. The next instant, she was gone. A ragged jump signature echoed in her wake. The bridge fell silent. Hale's jaw tensed. He turned to his comms officer. "Trace the jump vector." "Already working, sir." Hale stared at the empty space where the Dominion flagship had vanished. His voice was a quiet growl. "Run, Crintal. Run back to your masters. Tell them what you saw." Hours later, the Retribution hung silent over the battlefield. Salvage teams moved among the wreckage, gathering data, recovering enemy technology. Hale stood alone at the observation deck, eyes on the ruined starfield. Commander Briggs approached, an older, scarred veteran. "Captain, debrief complete. Casualty reports, minimal. The ship held perfectly." Hale gave a slight nod. She was built for this. Briggs hesitated. "And the Korath? They'll come back." Hale's gaze did not move from the stars. "Good." Briggs frowned. "You want that fight?" Hale's voice was cold steel. "I want them to know. Every time they look at the stars, I want them to remember this day, and the next after that." He turned, eyes burning with grim purpose. "We're not prey. We're not slaves. We are the nightmare they never saw coming." Briggs gave a hard smile. "Damn right, sir." Hale's lips twitched, something between a smirk and a promise. Then he straightened. "Prepare the fleet-wide broadcast." "Aye, sir." Moments later, his voice echoed across the Terran military channels. Clear, cold, unwavering. "This is Captain Marcus Hale of the UES Retribution. Mission complete. Enemy fleet routed. Let it be known, Terra stands, and we will not bow." He paused, voice dropping to a lethal tone. "To any who would threaten our worlds, remember what happened here." The channel closed. Far away, deep in the dark reaches of the galaxy, Varkos Eternal emerged from hyperspace, burned, broken, but alive. And aboard her battered bridge, High Lord Admiral Crintal prepared his final report. His claws hovered over the transmission pad. His voice was hollow yet resolute. "To the High Lords of the Dominion, I bring grave news. The humans have awakened. They are not what we believed. They are war-born, and if we do not change, we will burn." He closed the message, eyes haunted by the image of that terrible gray warship. UES Retribution. A name that would now echo in the nightmares of an empire. The council chamber of Korath Prime was a place few beings in the galaxy would ever dare to enter, and fewer still would survive leaving. The ceiling arched high above, a vault of black iron, inlaid with the bones of conquered enemies. The 12 High Lords of the Dominion sat in a circle of jagged thrones, each carved from the hulls of fallen warships. And now they listened in cold silence to the final transmission of High Lord Admiral Crintal. The projection of the Admiral, flickering with static, stood before them, scarred, weary, his eyes burning with hard truth. "The humans are war-born. They have constructed weapons beyond any known class. A single Terran warship routed the fleet of Theta Serpentis. They do not beg. They do not run. They will fight us." Static hissed. The recording ended. A heavy silence followed. At last, High Lord Vector, Lord of the Second Conquest Armada, let out a snarl. His voice was gravel and venom. "Cowardice!" He spat on the floor. "Crintal was weak. No species rises so quickly. His words are defeatist rot." Others murmured agreement. The Korath had ruled by strength for millennia. They had shattered stellar nations and enslaved entire races. The idea that primitive humans, newcomers to galactic war, could resist them was heresy. But not all voices were so blind. High Lord Zeranzul, the eldest among them, leaned forward on his throne. His eyes were slitted, cold with the weight of long wars. "I knew Krintal," he said softly. "He was no coward. If he sends such a warning, we must heed it." A younger lord hissed, "You would counsel fear?" Zeranzul's gaze snapped to him, a look that had silenced more than one challenger in the past. "I counsel wisdom," he said. "You would do well to remember it." The chamber stirred. Pride clashed with instinct. Finally, the Supreme Lord rose, taller than them all, draped in crimson-scaled armor. His voice boomed across the chamber. "Enough!" Silence fell like a blade. The Supreme Lord's eyes gleamed with dark purpose. "The humans must be tested again. If they have built such a vessel, we will face it with greater force." A clawed hand gestured. "Summon the 10th Conquest Armada. Let it burn a path to Sol, and let us see if these primitives can truly stand against the might of the Dominion." Word of the defeat at Theta Serpentis spread like wildfire across Terran space. But it was not a tale of fear. It was a tale of vengeance, of triumph. One human warship had shattered an entire Korath fleet. For the first time in human history, the people of Earth looked to the stars not with dread, but with defiance. In orbit over Mars, within the massive dry dock station Vanguard, Captain Marcus Hale stood on a catwalk, gazing up at the towering hull of UES Retribution. Repair crews swarmed across her battered frame, patching armor, replacing weapon arrays. Commander Briggs approached, datapad in hand. "Captain." Hale didn't turn. His eyes remained on the ship, the war beast that had defied an empire. "Report." Briggs handed over the datapad. "Fleetcom intercepted new chatter from Korath space. They're mobilizing. Big. Scouts report a second armada, 10th Conquest Fleet, jumping toward Terran sectors." Hale's gaze hardened. "How long?" "Estimates, 3 weeks until first contact. They're moving fast." A grim smile touched Hale's lips. "Good. Let them come." Briggs hesitated. "Sir, this fleet will be bigger. They won't underestimate us this time." Now Hale turned, eyes cold steel. "Neither will we." He gestured to the dock below, where crews were loading prototype weapon cores into the Retribution's main batteries. "Project Ares is fully online," Hale said. "Enhanced shield modulation, new Mark 7 railguns. The next fight will not be even." Briggs nodded slowly, a fierce grin creeping over his weathered face. "Terra fights." Hale's voice was a low growl. "And we finish what we started." Across the outer Terran colonies, the call to arms spread. Reserve fleets were activated. Planetary defense grids powered up for the first time in decades. Civilian yards churned out strike craft and gunships around the clock. But even among the military, the truth was clear. Retribution would be the tip of the spear again. Her legend had already begun to grow. In dark bars and fleet mess halls, soldiers whispered of the dreadnought that killed a fleet, of the captain who gave no quarter. Marcus Hale knew this weight, and he bore it willingly. 3 weeks later, deep space along the outer Orion defense line. Sensors blazed red across every station. Korath 10th Conquest Armada. Arrival confirmed. 70 capital ships, hundreds of escorts, planet-cracking siege platforms, a force designed to overwhelm, to drown resistance in fire and steel, and at its heart, High Lord Vector's flagship, a leviathan of a vessel, bristling with weapons. On board the Retribution, Marcus Hale stood at the central display as the enemy fleet emerged from hyperspace. The Terran Defense Fleet held formation nearby, 3 carriers, 6 battleships, and support wings. A force respectable by human standards, but dwarfed by the Dominion Armada. Comms crackled. Admiral Foster's voice came through, hard-edged. "Captain Hale, you know the plan. Retribution punches the line. We follow through. Hale's reply was calm. Understood, Admiral. We'll open the door. On the Korath flagship, High Lord Vector watched the Terran fleet with contempt. Primitive fools, he growled. They dare form a battle line before us. His weapons officers stood ready. Shall we commence planetary bombardment once we break them? Vector's jaws split in a cruel grin. Number, I want prisoners. I want their captain brought before me. This Hale they whisper of. But Marcus Hale had no intention of being captured. His voice rang out across the Retribution's bridge. All hands, battle stations, prepare for primary assault run. Crew locked down positions. Shields surged to full power. Massive railguns charged with magnetic fury. Hale's eyes burned as the enemy fleet loomed. Time to teach them again. The battle began. Space lit with fire as both fleets clashed. Plasma bolts, torpedoes, beams of light crisscrossed the void. Ships died in screams of ruptured metal. But then came the Retribution, a juggernaut cutting straight through the enemy formation. Her railguns fired in relentless cadence, one Korath cruiser torn apart with each volley. Enhanced shields absorbed wave after wave of fire. New EMP warheads crippled entire wings of enemy fighters, and Hale drove them deeper. No retreat, he ordered. We go through. Aboard the Korath flagship, Vector's rage boiled. How is one ship doing this? Concentrate fire, kill it! But it was too late. The Retribution had already closed the gap, her main guns aligned, firing a salvo that pierced straight through the flagship's bow, gutting decks and setting fires that no Korath crew could control. On the human bridge, Hale's gaze was unflinching. Target engines, end it. Another strike, and the Korath flagship's core detonated in a sun-bright explosion. Vector's final scream was lost in the fire. Across the battlefield, Korath ships faltered. Without their flagship, without leadership, panic took root. The Dominion's second armada began to break, and Marcus Hale gave the final command. Pursue, no survivors. When the guns finally fell silent, Retribution floated amidst the wreckage of yet another slaughtered armada. Marcus Hale stood at the observation deck, gaze cold as the void. Briggs approached. Sir, we did it, again. Hale's reply was a growl. And they'll keep coming. So will we. His eyes burned with grim resolve. We're not done, not until the Dominion learns one truth. Briggs frowned. What truth, sir? Hale's lips curled in a thin, deadly smile. That humanity will never kneel. The ruins of the 10th Conquest Armada still drifted through Terran space like a graveyard of shattered arrogance. Scorched debris tumbled endlessly, silent witnesses to a massacre the Korath Dominion had never imagined possible. But even as Terran crews salvaged what they could, and the Retribution underwent repairs at Mars' orbit, a darker storm gathered in the depths of Korath space. The Dominion was an empire forged in conquest, ruled by warlords whose authority rested upon an unbroken chain of victories. Now that chain was cracked, 2 armadas destroyed, by humans. And in the throne city of Vorkon, beneath the great blood-iron spires, the Supreme War Council convened in secret. Not the High Lords, not the politicians, the generals, the true architects of war. In a chamber lit only by red glyphs, they stood, hulking figures armored in dark warplate, scarred veterans of centuries of bloodshed. At their center stood War Master Kortal, no admiral, no court noble, a killer, a soldier bred for one purpose. He had watched from the shadows as Krintal's fleet burned, as Vector's pride was gutted in the void. Now the old ways would end. He gestured to the holomap. You see the result, he growled. 2 fleets destroyed. Human technology surpasses what we believed. Their war leaders do not fear us. A general snarled. The High Lords would waste more fleets in pride. Kortal's eyes gleamed cold. No more fleets, not yet. He keyed the next display. Schematics of Terran warships, the Retribution at its center. One ship humiliated us. One captain crippled our doctrine. A rumble of agreement filled the chamber. Kortal leaned in. We will not fight them in lines, not in grand armadas. We will bleed them in the shadows. We will strike at their worlds, their leaders, their supply chains, one blow at a time. His voice darkened. And when they are weak, when their champion falls, then we will crush them. 2 weeks later, deep within Terran frontier space, the first blow struck. The colony world Eden's Reach was a thriving outpost, population 50,000, home to one of the largest antimatter refineries in the sector. No one saw the Korath strike force approach, stealthed, silent, surgically precise. In a single coordinated assault, orbital defenses were neutralized, ground forces descended, civilians were butchered. The refinery was destroyed in a firestorm that lit the upper atmosphere. By the time Terran reinforcements arrived, only smoldering ruins remained. A single message was left, carved into the planetary relay tower. You will bleed. On Mars, Marcus Hale read the report in cold silence. Commander Briggs paced nearby, rage in his voice. Civilians, Captain. They're going after our colonies now. Cowards! Hale's jaw tightened. The images of the massacre were burned into his mind. Bodies in the streets, the blackened shell of the refinery. He spoke low, dangerous. This was not a random strike. They're adapting, changing tactics. Briggs cursed. So we hunt them, make them pay. Hale's gaze sharpened. We will, but not with half measures. They think shadows will save them. We'll drag them into the light. He rose. Ready the Retribution, and inform Fleetcom. I want full clearance for deep strikes into Korath space. Briggs blinked. You want to take the fight to them? Hale's eyes burned. Yes. No more waiting. No more defense. We strike back. In the heart of Terran Military Command, Admiral Foster listened as Hale made his case. The old admiral studied the young captain. Stone-faced, hard-edged, eyes that had stared down death and did not flinch. When Hale finished, Foster leaned back. This is dangerous ground, Marcus. Korath territory is vast. Their core systems are heavily defended. Hale's reply was cold steel. And if we sit here, they'll bleed us dry, one colony at a time. Silence. Finally, Foster nodded. Permission granted. You'll lead the first strike wing. Hit their supply lines, force them to respond. A grim smile touched Hale's lips. Understood. Days later, UES Retribution entered hyperspace once more, accompanied by a spearhead task force. 2 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, and stealth recon vessels. Their mission? Strike deep into Korath logistics routes, disrupt their war machine, hunt their predators. Weeks of raids followed, convoys ambushed, weapon platforms destroyed, listening posts gutted. Retribution earned new scars, but her name spread like wildfire through Korath space. Crews whispered of the gray death that came from nowhere, leaving only wreckage behind. And Marcus Hale gave no quarter. Every strike was a message. You are not untouchable. But the Korath were no fools. Kortal watched each report with narrowed eyes. He gathered his elite, a shadow unit known only as Blood Reavers, hunters of captains, assassins of fleets. Their mission, kill Marcus Hale, cripple Retribution, break human spirit. The trap was set. A falsified convoy, a baited target deep within a Korath frontier system, weakly defended. Too perfect. And the humans took it. UES Retribution emerged from hyperspace, scanners active, crew tense. Briggs eyed the data. Looks clean, sir. Too clean. Hale's instincts burned. A chill crawled up his spine. Hold position. Full combat readiness. Moments later, The ambush struck. Stealthed cruisers decloaked, plasma mines detonated, boarding pods launched toward the Retribution's hull. Alarms howled. The ship rocked under the assault. On the bridge, Hale was a statue of focus. Countermeasures, fire, full-point defense. Guns blazed, boarding pods shredded mid-flight, but some struck, locking onto hull sections. Korath Blood Reavers breached inside. In the lower decks, the battle became savage. Terran Marines fought hand-to-hand, blades and plasma in the dark. Blood Reavers were no ordinary troops. They moved with terrifying speed, armor bristling with weapons. But human Marines were hardened by a war they refused to lose. Marcus Hale did not remain on the bridge. Grabbing a rifle, clad in combat armor, he led a strike team into the lower decks himself. "We hold this ship, or we die on it," he told his men, and they fought, room by room, deck by deck. Blades clashed, plasma hissed, blood slicked the steel floors. In the engine core chamber, Hale faced the Blood Reaver commander, a towering figure with twin plasma blades. No words passed, only steel intent. The duel was brutal. The Reaver moved like a shadow, but Hale was faster, harder, driven by a cold fury that would not break. He baited an opening, then fired point blank. The Reaver fell, burning. Hours later, the Retribution emerged battered, but alive. The enemy ambush shattered. The Blood Reavers slain. On the bridge, Hale wiped blood from his gauntlet. Briggs approached, bruised but grinning. "Trap failed. We're still here." Hale's reply was a growl. "And now they know. They can't kill us in shadows either." He turned to the helm. "Plot course. Deeper into their territory. We're not finished." The UES Retribution drifted in the cold dark between stars, deep inside Korath territory now, far beyond friendly lines, beyond Terran sensor nets, past the last known beacons. She was wounded but unbroken. Her hull bore the scars of the Blood Reaver ambush, plasma scorches, jagged tears along her flanks, whole decks sealed off from the vacuum. But her engines still burned blue. Her guns remained hot. Her captain, Marcus Hale, still breathed. And now, they were hunting. Not for convoys, not for border worlds, for the heart of the beast itself. On the bridge, the lights were low. Every officer was wired tight, eyes hollow from too many sleepless shifts. But no one broke. Not under this captain. Marcus Hale stood at the forward display, arms folded, eyes fixed on the shifting Korath star charts. "Target identified," Briggs reported. His voice rasped from fatigue but burned with purpose. "Vorkon Sector Relay Nexus, critical communications hub for the Inner Dominion." Hale's gaze narrowed. "Defenses?" Briggs pulled up the data feed. "Heavy static garrisons, multiple cruisers, orbital platforms. But if we take that nexus down, we cripple their war coordination for months." Hale's jaw set. "Then we hit it." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. To strike so deep, against a hardened nexus, that was madness. But Hale wasn't asking for opinions. He turned slowly. His voice was low, iron. "They think they're safe in the core. They think we won't dare. They're wrong." He swept a cold gaze across the crew. "We go in fast, hit hard, and we break their spine. No half measures, no retreat." And no one argued, because this was Marcus Hale's ship. And after what they had survived, there was no room left for fear. 2 days later, the Retribution coasted silently into the Vorkon sector. They had taken the long road, through dead systems and collapsed jump relays. The Korath would never expect a Terran warship here. But surprise alone wouldn't be enough. "Final systems check," Hale ordered. Shields came online, cannons spun up, missile bays loaded, engine shrouds pulsed, ready for sudden bursts of speed. Every crewman strapped in. Every Marine checked weapons twice. because this would not be a hit and run. It was a raid of annihilation. The Korath Nexus came into view, a vast station of black iron and spiked towers suspended over a molten world. Defense platforms bristled with guns. Patrol ships circled lazily, unaware of the hunter in their midst. On the bridge, the tension thickened as Hale gave the final order. Engage. The Retribution surged forward on silent drives. Her first volley was surgical, railgun slugs piercing 2 enemy frigates before alarms could sound. Debris rained down on the molten planet below. Then her full batteries opened fire, plasma lances slashing through orbital platforms, cutting them apart like butcher's blades. The enemy fleet scrambled, too late. Kill everything that moves, Hale ordered, voice cold. No survivors. The battle became a slaughter. The Korath had numbers, but they had never fought a ship like this. Never fought a captain who refused to fear them. The Retribution dove between enemy formations, her shields flashing under withering fire. Countermeasures decoyed plasma salvos. Her guns fired in relentless rhythm. 1, 2, 3 ships gone with every pass, and still she pressed closer, toward the heart of the Nexus. On the enemy command deck, Korath warlord Jakor watched in disbelief as his ships died one after another. "Impossible," he snarled. "One ship cannot do this." But it was happening. His forces were crumbling. In desperation, he ordered planetary defense weapons activated. "Burn them from orbit!" On the Retribution, alarms chimed. "Planetary cannons charging." Marcus Hale didn't flinch. His voice was ice. "Target their power cores. We end this now." The Retribution's main batteries swung toward the station itself. With a thunderous salvo, railgun slugs slammed into the Nexus's power grid. Explosions ripped through its core towers. The entire station shuddered, fires blooming across its length. Planetary weapons went dark. But Hale wasn't finished. "Prepare assault team," he ordered. Briggs blinked. "You're going down there?" Hale's eyes burned. "Yes, we take their command note ourselves." Minutes later, a Terran assault shuttle launched, Marcus Hale leading the charge personally. The shuttle screamed through the debris field, dodging flak and wreckage, slamming into the Nexus's outer spire. Hale was first through the breach, rifle blazing. His Marines followed, room by room, floor by floor, cutting down Korath defenders in brutal close quarters. In the command chamber, Warlord Jakor prepared his last stand. His elite guards ringed the room. The doors blew inward. Hale entered in silence, armor scorched, eyes cold as the void. Jakor bellowed a challenge, charging with twin plasma axes. Hale met him head-on, rifle empty, blade drawn. The duel was savage, steel against alien fury, but Jakor was driven by pride. Hale was driven by something colder, the memory of massacred colonies, of civilians butchered by the Korath war machine. He fought with grim, merciless purpose. When it ended, Jakor lay broken on the floor. Hale stood over him, breathing hard, blade dripping alien blood. "Your empire will fall," Hale said quietly. Jakor's last breath was a snarl of denial. Then nothing. An hour later, the Retribution withdrew from the burning wreck of the Nexus. Mission complete. Back aboard his ship, Hale stood once more on the observation deck, watching the fires consume the Vorkon station. Briggs approached. "We crippled their comms. Their core fleets won't coordinate for months." Hale nodded. "Good. Let them know. We are coming for all of it." Briggs frowned. "They'll retaliate hard for this." Hale's voice was a growl. "Let them. I want them angry. I want them desperate." He turned to the helm. "Plot new targets. We go deeper." And in the cold heart of Korath space, the message spread. The gray death comes. The humans are no longer prey. The smoke of the burned-out Vorkon Nexus hadn't even cleared before the first whispers of the raid echoed through Korath space. A Terran warship, one ship, had struck the heart of the Dominion's communications network and lived to tell it. The insult was too great to ignore, the fear spreading too fast. In the great War Council chambers of Korath Prime, the Supreme Lord listened to a dozen frantic voices speak of human treachery, of the insolence of this Captain Hale. But it was War Master Kortal who said nothing. He simply watched the reports in cold silence, studying every strike pattern, every movement of the Terran dreadnought. And when the others had shouted themselves hoarse, he finally spoke. "They have waged war upon us in our core." The chamber grew silent. "We do not match them ship for ship," Kortal continued. "We do not chase them like prey. We set the trap that will drown them." Aboard the UES Retribution, Marcus Hale was already planning his next strike. Their hit on Vorkon had thrown the Dominion's military command into chaos. Reports flooded in from Terran intelligence. Whole Korath fleets recalled from the front lines to protect core worlds, panic rippling through sectors once deemed untouchable. Exactly what Hale wanted. He stood before the star map in his briefing room, Briggs and his senior officers arrayed around him. "They'll regroup quickly," Briggs said. "We've stirred the hornet's nest." Hale's expression didn't change. "Then we hit them again before they can." He pointed to a sector deep within Korath space, Jorath's Reach, a major fuel refinery complex, critical to the Dominion's remaining fleet logistics. "We cripple that next." The officers exchanged glances. It was an even riskier strike, deeper than they'd ever gone. But none of them questioned the order. Not after Theta Serpentis. Not after Vorkon. Under Marcus Hale, this was no longer a defensive war. It was a campaign of annihilation. But even as the Retribution plotted its next course, Kortal's trap was already being set. The Blood Reavers had failed. Now he would deploy something worse. Void Fangs, an ancient breed of Korath stealth cruisers, black as the void, silent, undetectable to most human sensors. Their captains were veterans of 100 shadow wars. Their sole mission, to hunt Hale's ship, to end the human threat. The next raid began like the others. Retribution dropped into Jorath's Reach under heavy stealth cover, her crew ready for a fight. Initial scans confirmed the target. Refineries and dockyards arrayed around a dying red star. Hale gave the order. "Engage, full assault pattern." The Terran dreadnought surged forward, guns roaring. Within minutes, enemy defenses were in flames. Fuel silos ruptured, sending shockwaves through the orbital platforms. The Korath defenders broke and ran. Retribution owned the field once more. But then, the trap was sprung. Without warning, Void Fangs decloaked at extreme range, 6 in total, forming a net around the Terran ship. They attacked with no broadcast, no challenge, only death. Particle lances licked at the Retribution's shields. Magnetic mines forced emergency evasions. Alarms screamed through the ship. "Multiple hostiles! Stealth cruisers!" Briggs grabbed a console, eyes wide. "Sir, they're inside our sensor net. They've been waiting." Hale's voice was stone. "Brace! We fight through." The battle that followed was the most brutal yet. For the first time, the Retribution was truly outmatched, not in firepower, but in detection and positioning. Void Fangs flickered in and out of range, ghosts in the dark, slashing at the Terran ship from impossible angles. Below decks, damage reports poured in. Engineering crews fought fires across multiple compartments. Shield generators strained under constant bombardment. But on the bridge, Marcus Hale remained a pillar of ice. "We turn the net against them," he ordered. He called up a sector-wide gravimetric map, tracking not the ships, but their distortions in local space-time. They can't hide from gravity, he growled. Lock solutions, prepare full-bore firing arcs. One by one, the Void Fangs overextended, and when they did, Retribution's railguns struck with unerring precision. One enemy cruiser was gutted by a 3-shot burst, another lost shields and was finished by missile salvos. But the fight cost them. Retribution bled. Her outer armor was flayed open in multiple sectors. Life support flickered in forward compartments. The bridge rocked with every hit. Briggs staggered, blood running from a scalp wound. "2 more hostiles left," he shouted. Hale's voice cut through the chaos. "We finished them." With a sudden vector change, Retribution surged at full acceleration, barreling toward the remaining Void Fangs head-on. It was a move no Korath captain expected, a Terran warship going straight into the jaws of an ambush. But that was Hale. Always forward, never retreat. Caught off guard, one Void Fang drifted into a kill zone and was shredded by combined main battery fire. The last enemy cruiser disengaged, vanishing into the void. On the battered bridge, silence finally fell. Smoke hung thick. Crew moved like ghosts through the damage. Briggs wiped blood from his eyes. "They damn near got us, sir." Hale leaned heavily against his command chair, one hand slick with his own blood where shrapnel had torn his side. His voice was hoarse but unbroken. "But they didn't." He turned to the helm. "Get us out of this sector. Emergency jump to fallback point." Retribution limped toward deep space, engines flickering but still alive. Later, in the medbay, Hale sat on the edge of a surgical table, arm patched, ribs bound. Briggs stood nearby, face grim. "They're adapting, sir. The Void Fangs were different, smarter." Hale nodded slowly. "Cortal's work. He's learning." Briggs frowned. "We barely survived this one. If they bring more..." Hale's eyes burned. "Then we get stronger." He rose despite the pain. "We've bloodied them in their heart, Briggs. They won't let this stand. They'll throw everything they have next." A long silence. Then Briggs asked the unspoken question. "So, what do we do now?" Hale's reply was a low, deadly growl. "We go for the throat." He brought up a new star map, the core sectors of Korath Prime itself. "Next, we hit them where it hurts the most." And as word spread across the Dominion that the Retribution had once again survived the impossible, panic began to creep even into the halls of the Supreme Lord, because now they knew the humans would not stop, and their captain, this Marcus Hale, would not die easily. The stars of Korath Prime burned red with the weight of centuries. Their light fell upon a world of obsidian spires and iron cities, a planet built upon conquest and blood. No foreign fleet had ever entered its space. No alien had dared to strike at its black heart. Until now. Deep within the War Council chamber, the Supreme Lord stood before his generals, claws gripping the iron rail. 2 armadas broken. His voice echoed through the great chamber. Our core worlds raided, nexus in flames, and still this human, this Hale, defies us. A dozen Korath warlords snarled in response, tails lashing the floor. "He will not stop," growled War Master Cortal, eyes burning. "He knows the truth now. Only death can end this war." The Supreme Lord bared his fangs. "Then we must deliver it. The next engagement will not be in the shadows. We will bring the full weight of the Dominion to bear." Cortal inclined his head. "I will command the vanguard. Let him come to us." But aboard the battered UES Retribution, Marcus Hale was already a step ahead. Repairs were rushed, weapons jury-rigged, armor plates welded in place by exhausted crews who had long since passed the point of fear. Every man and woman aboard that ship knew what came next. The final blow. and every one of them stood ready. In the command briefing, Hale addressed his officers. His side was still bandaged from the last fight, but he stood tall, unbroken. The holomap displayed Korath Prime, its orbital rings, fleet stations, and planetary defenses. Briggs exhaled slowly. "Sir, this is the heart of their empire. If we go in, there's no fallback, no reinforcements." Hale's gaze was steel. "We go in because they won't expect it. No species in the galaxy has ever dared to strike Korath Prime." He swept his eyes across the room. "But we are not any species. We are human, and we will show them." A grim smile passed between the officers. "What's the plan?" Briggs asked. Hale tapped a point on the orbital ring, the primary defense control station. "We breach their command systems, blind their planetary weapons. Once we cripple those, we strike the surface." Briggs blinked. "You want to hit the planet itself?" "Yes," Hale said coldly. "We're not here to send a message anymore. We're here to end this war." The jump was plotted, a direct burn into Korath Prime space, bypassing standard entry points, a suicide vector by most measures. But Hale didn't care. The enemy had tried to hunt him in the shadows. Now they would face him in the light. 3 days later, UES Retribution emerged from hyperspace, alone, wounded, and angry. Before her, Korath Prime filled the void, a world girded in rings of steel, its orbit crowded with warships. An entire home fleet waited, more than 500 capital ships, legions of fighters, stations bristling with guns, and at their center, Kortal's flagship, a dreadnought the size of a small moon. On the bridge, alarms howled as enemy locks painted the Retribution. "They're hailing us," Briggs said. "Put it through," Hale replied. The screen flared to life, revealing Kortal, scarred, armored, eyes gleaming with savage triumph. "So you come to die, human," he rumbled. "Fitting. You will be ended before my people." Hale's voice was ice. "I didn't come to die. I came to bury your empire." And with that, he cut the channel. "All hands, battle stations," Hale ordered. "We're going through." The Retribution surged forward, engines flaring. Enemy ships closed in, a tide of steel and plasma. The first wave of Korath cruisers launched missiles and particle beams, a wall of fire meant to vaporize any sane vessel. But the Terran dreadnought dove through it, weaving between incoming fire, shields flaring and recharging. Her guns spoke first, rail slugs piercing the lead cruisers, reducing them to burning wrecks. The enemy reacted, more ships closing the net. But Hale didn't falter. "Full speed. Target the control station." The battle became a brutal gauntlet. For every Korath ship that died, another filled its place. The Retribution's shields flickered dangerously, her hull bleeding atmosphere. Marines scrambled to seal hull breaches. Fires burned unchecked in several compartments. But still, she advanced. On the Korath flagship, Kortal watched in grim fascination. "Insane," one of his officers muttered. "They should have fled." "No," Kortal said softly. "This is not fear. This is war." He stood. "Ready my personal guard. The human will not reach the surface alive." But Marcus Hale had no intention of stopping. As the Retribution punched through the final defense line, he gave the order. "Prepare assault shuttles. We take the fight to the planet." With a daring break, the Terran dreadnought launched its shuttles, Hale leading the charge personally once again. Through a storm of enemy fire, the shuttles screamed toward the surface, punching through the upper atmosphere in trails of burning plasma. Korath Prime's capital city, Vrakor, was a fortress world in itself. Towering spires, endless gun emplacements, legions of ground troops. The Terran shuttles hit hard, disgorging Marines into the heart of enemy territory. and Marcus Hale led them, rifle in hand, armor battered, eyes blazing. The street fighting was brutal beyond anything seen before. Korath warriors fought with claws, blades, and heavy plasma cannons. But the human Marines fought with something more, the iron will of a species that refused extinction. Every block became a meat grinder. Hale's team advanced meter by meter, leaving a trail of broken bodies in their wake. Finally, they reached their objective. The Supreme Command Spire, the nerve center of Korath military coordination. But Kortal was waiting. The final battle was fought in the shadow of that spire. Hale's Marines breached the outer defenses, only to be met by Kortal's personal guard, elite warriors clad in black warplate. Blades clashed with rifles, plasma burned through steel, and in the midst of it, Marcus Hale faced Kortal himself. The Korath War Master was a titan, wielding a massive energy glaive. "You are strong, human," he growled, "but this is where your war ends." Hale's voice was low and deadly. "It ends when you fall." The duel was savage. Kortal's strikes could have shattered steel, but Hale dodged with brutal efficiency, fighting with every ounce of strength left in his bloodied frame. Blades rang, blood sprayed, and at last, Hale found the opening, a feint, a twist, and his blade drove deep through Kortal's chest. The War Master staggered, blood pouring from his wound. "Impossible," he gasped. Hale's voice was a whisper of steel. "You underestimated us, like all the rest." And with that, he drove the blade deeper, ending it. With Kortal's death, the remaining Korath defenders broke. The Terran Marines secured the command spire. The planetary defense grid went offline. Above, the Retribution broadcast the signal. "Korath Prime is neutralized. The Dominion is broken." In the ruins of the spire, Hale stood battered, his armor scorched and torn, face streaked with blood and grime, but his eyes burned with victory. Briggs limped to his side. "It's done, sir. They're falling back across the entire sector." Hale nodded slowly. "And they will remember this day. Forever." Later, as the first Terran reinforcements arrived, Hale stood once more at the observation deck of the Retribution, watching the dawn rise over the shattered spires of Korath Prime. Briggs approached quietly. "What now, sir?" Hale's voice was a low growl. "Now we rebuild. We prepare." He turned, eyes still hard. "Because the galaxy knows this. Humanity does not kneel, not to the Korath, not to anyone." And in the far reaches of space, as word spread of Korath Prime's fall, the stars themselves seemed to whisper a new truth. The age of human prey was over. The age of human war had begun.